to Simon for giving us this space, giving us this time, and thank you all for coming. My name is Dr. Ahmed Sawaki, and I'm a psychiatrist, but I'm not a psychiatrist today. I'm going to be your moderator today. We have some fantastic guests. We are all here to advocate for the Palestinian people. We're going to be taking your questions. We've got fantastic guests. We are going to have a Slido question and answer, so if you put your questions through, I'll be introducing everybody now. Are we all ready? Okay, great, fantastic. We're starting off, we've got Dr. Khalid Louas at the very end, who's a consultant surgeon. And Dr. Khalid Louas has recently come back from Gaza, and he will tell you a bit more about what he saw there, what he did there. Next to him, we've got Dr. Miriam Francois. We all know Miriam now. Miriam's a filmmaker, a journalist, social movement expert, should I call you? I'm going to ask her to say a bit more about herself in a bit, because she has been doing this for a while. She's brilliant. Next man, do I really need to introduce him? Dr. surgeon from London, also from Gaza, and as we all know, he spent weeks and weeks in Gaza doing miracles, I would say, with great difficulty, very difficult circumstances. But not just that, because even now, there is no event that you will not find and 2 weeks ago we marched together for miles in London, and I know that I probably reminded him of the walks that he did in Gaza, from hospital to hospital. We'll come to that. Now, another person next to him, who I really don't have to introduce, is His Excellency Dr. Hussein. He's a Palestinian ambassador. And I'm sure that every country in the world would want to try and grab him and get him to be their ambassador. I mean, just the TV interviews that he does. When do you actually see next to Sam, we have Amira Numarawi. Is a Palestinian who spoke to 250,000 people only 2 weeks ago, and her speech, if you haven't heard it, you need to go back and listen to it. It's absolutely brilliant. She is working for PMRS, which is a charity which we are all here for and fundraising for, and have been doing great work for decades, but I'm going to let her tell you a bit more about that. Amira.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, London. I don't know why you surprise me every time, but you're just amazing. So I really appreciate everyone making the effort, and why not when we have such an amazing panel here. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Palestinian Medical Relief Society, if you haven't heard of us already. We were founded 46 years ago by Dr. Mustafa Balgoti, who I'm sure you've all seen in the infamous Talk TV viral video. And we are the largest Palestinian-run medical organization that's on the ground taking care of primary healthcare across the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. So we have 200 employees in Gaza who, very much like Dr. Khaled and Dr. Hassan, are very much the real heroes. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and hopefully we can raise some funds to go towards those teams and their really important work on the ground. Thank you.
I'm going to sit down now. The reason being is that we are here to listen to our panel and get your questions as well. I hope that everybody who's listening on Zoom find it useful, and you can put your questions through on the slide over there that we're going to have it. Not just yet, I'm sure at some point we will do. I'm going to start right from the very end. So, Khaled Dawes, you were in Gaza only a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago possibly? You're back here, sat here speaking to this great audience who've shown their appreciation and are here to campaign for and advocate for the Palestinian people. Tell me what you saw there and how did that change you as a person? I know you've been before, but this particular visit of yours, how would you describe it? No, please stay sat down. I'll give that back to my mic.
Do you mind if I stand up, Ahmed? Just because I feel like I'm caged behind this.
There's people up here as well, loads.
Yeah. I have to say, I felt a little bit emotional listening to the introduction, because it's comfortable being in a surrounding where people feel so strongly about this particular issue. The background to my visits to Gaza, I've been going to Gaza for a number of years. My father was brought up in Gaza. My mum was born in Gaza, in a Maghazi camp, which is in the centre of Gaza city, in Gaza Strip. But they haven't been back. I've been back more often than they have, actually, in my last 5-10 years. And the overwhelming feeling when I went in this particular time was very different. In the past, it was a bit of excitement, a bit of mystery, a bit of relief. But this time, and I think a lot of people here may be able to sort of feel and understand what I'm talking about, we felt a lot of angst, a lot of frustration, and a lot of pent-up anger and wanting to do something. When I walked into Rafah, across the Egyptian side to the Palestinian side, the overwhelming scene was smoke in the horizon, and you could see the explosion still going off. You could smell the gunpowder in the air. It was very noticeable. But the overwhelming feeling was relief and a sudden sense of feeling that I'm there. I now feel I can say I'm here and I can share in the pain. That was the overwhelming feeling I had. And people say, well, how about all the other work? Well, yeah, the other work is also very important, but actually, it's a drop in the ocean. Anybody who goes there, a single person, it's a drop in the ocean. The need is so massive, the volume of suffering is so huge, that I think the best thing that we can do, at least, is as a society, as a group, is to be able to empathize and to be able to show solidarity. They are craving for a sense of solidarity. They worry about abandonment because they get no news. When you're there, there's no news. We were cut off for the 2 weeks we were there. So that was very, very important. And that was, me walking in there, that was what I felt.
I mean, you stayed there and, you were there as a medic, but at the same time, what did you see in terms of the Palestinian people, not even the patients? We're talking about, you've got people, you've met relatives of patients, you met people working on the ground, ambulance crews, and people around you trying to make sure that you're fed and watered, I'm sure, as well. What was the sense of, was it despair that you got from them, or was it hope, or was it resilience? That's what we're here to talk about.
Well, I think resilience is a theme. It's very important that we tell the stories of what's going on, and there are examples that I clearly have in my own mind of what I saw and what I witnessed and what I heard when I was there, and there are ones that particularly stick in my own mind. One of them was the first day we arrived, driving through the tents, the vast number of tents through Rafah. has turned into a tent city, and a slightly comical one is a picture of a man who set up his barbershop in a tent along the route. You see that the destruction and the suffering is an equalizer. Everybody is suffering. There's no rich, there's no poor, everyone is in the same situation. We carried our own food with us from Cairo. We carried our own food and our water with us from Cairo, because even if we got access to it in Gaza, we thought it was unfair that we would be able to draw upon the resources that were available, the rare resources there. And there are a couple of things that stick in my own mind. One was a man who was standing outside the hospital we were working at in the center of Gaza Strip in Deir al-Balah. And he was an older man, pacing just slowly outside the maternity block where we were working. And he looked at me and he said, "Hello." They all think I'm Swedish when I'm in Gaza, by the way. So I looked back and he said, "Sabah al-khair," and he was startled. And his story was that this man is a scientist from Gaza City. His home was destroyed. His family had dispersed, so his children had gone probably south to Rafah and elsewhere. And he was there because his wife has cancer and was in the hospital looking for care, and they were staying in a tent in the grounds of the hospital. Quite an insult to his pride to have to live in a tent like this. This is a man well educated who's done a lot in his life, and he's now hoping for some kind of mercy, praying that his wife will be transferred out of Gaza for her care. Of course, who knows when that's going to happen. And he didn't want anything from me. He just wanted to say hello, talk to me, and we exchanged names. And then I'll tell you very briefly another story, because I won't keep you too long. Another story which sticks in my mind very much is a man who came up to our doctor's office on the 31st of January, of December, sorry, New Year's Eve. And he was looking for the foreign doctor amongst us, a female foreign doctor. We were there as a group of 5 doctors, and amongst us was Debbie, who's an obstetrician who you might have seen on CNN. And she's a brilliant woman, very much sort of very softly spoken, very caring, and she was sitting in the corner, and he said, "I'm looking for the foreign female doctor." And she looked a bit worried. What's this about? And what he wanted to tell us that his daughter, who came into the hospital the previous day, nearly dead because she had shrapnel to her chest, and we had helped the local team. We did not do the operation independently. We were part of the team. He wanted to come and thank us. And he came up and he was in tears because he thought he had lost his daughter. She was alive the next morning, and he was extremely grateful, in tears, and he asked me if he could hug me. Well, of course he could hug me, because actually, by hugging me, you're conceiving the tears I'm going to have from listening to your story. And this is the kind of thing that you hear over and over again, and it's failed, you can't but be touched by what you hear and see.
And then I saw it was Sky News. And I thought, wow! And yes! And I know that people around the world, because I'm on social media quite a bit, everybody was saying yes. And just a sense of, someone is speaking up. Because there has been a sense over the past 2 months that even though all of us here are speaking up, the message is not getting through. And I think you got the message through in a number of ways, including ceasefire now. Tell us what inspired you. And I know the question was there was a guest, another guest who was there, and you're the one who stood out.
I don't really know where to start. Firstly, obviously, I had no idea that clip would go viral, or I would have washed my hair. It was, for so many months, obviously, we have all been witness, especially those of us who have been watching things closely, a live stream of a daily diet of extreme violence, and a sense that not only is that violence not being reflected on our screens accurately, but that we're not hearing the type of moral leadership that we would hope to hear.
or that is in some way at all commensurate with the values that this country purports to stand for. And the double standards are particularly glaring to all of us with things like Ukraine, in the ongoing issues in Ukraine, and the fact that the narrative around what's happening in Gaza being so deeply distorted compared to the reality. And I think that frustration, of course, was what was coming through in the interview. I think that, I've spent a week now thinking about why it is that particular clip went viral. My conclusion is that we're just not really used to seeing European people not be complete we're in a church, not be complete idiots when we express ourselves when it comes to this particular conflict. It's the truth that unfortunately I walk into news sets on a regular basis, as will many people on this panel. And unfortunately, rather than it being a setup where you expect the reporters in front of you, colleagues of mine, to have an understanding commensurate with the reality and to ask questions and to probe in a way that brings to light the truth of what's happening. Instead, you end up in false debates, false discussions, false premises, and I think what you saw on that day was just my acute frustration with the terms of the discussion and the sort of, if you know me in real life, which you do, what you saw there was really just what I'm like day to day.
I want to pick up what you said there about colleagues.
Yeah.
You're a journalist as well as many other things. You have friends, you have colleagues. How hard is it for you, especially, it is a serious event that we are at today. And it's also a serious point of time, significant, where over 116 now journalists have been killed. How do you feel when you speak to other journalists, or even yourself as a guest, and journalists are not really picking up on that?
So there's a couple of things, Ahmed. So I feel like what people maybe also need to know is that foreign journalists, so journalists like myself, when we go and report on stories in other parts of the world, say tomorrow, outside of this conflict, I was sent to Gaza, I will be teamed up with what we call in the industry a fixer. And what a fixer is, in my opinion, just quite a disrespectful term for a local journalist who is our eyes and ears on the ground. And the people that you're talking about, the Palestinian journalists who are losing their lives right now, are the people that we rely on as journalists from the West when we go into those locations to keep us safe, to get us the stories, to get us into the right places. They are our eyes and ears on the ground, and every single journalist in this country knows that what I'm saying is true. And so that's why it really, really upsets me deeply that so few of my colleagues have been willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with people who, when we're on the ground and we come under fire, which does happen to foreign correspondents, you can be with a local fixer, a local producer, somebody who's helping you navigate the terrain, and stuff will go down. And in that moment, your life is in the hands of somebody who, in my experience, systematically goes above and beyond to protect you. And we are not matching that for our colleagues. Far from it.
I really do, and I do have colleagues around we were following you on social media whilst you told the world how you were not able to operate, or if you did operate in ways which, as you once described, are from very, very old textbooks. I remember you talking about, basically operating without the pain relief that you need, without the antibiotics. But you did what you could. And I know that in the end, you left with a very, very heavy heart. Will you tell us how you felt when you left Gaza?
So, my departure from Gaza was in 2 stages. Around day 40, we had been isolated in Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital for around 10 days after Shifa was surrounded by the Israeli army, and Al-Ahli, what was left of it after the missile attack, which was basically just 2 operating rooms and the ground floor, which had 30 beds, had become the only hospital functioning in Gaza City. And for that period, we were operating almost around the clock without stop. And the hospital had around 500 wounded. And every day we were having to decide who lives and who dies, because we could not possibly take everyone to the operating room. There were just 2, and it was myself and an orthopedic surgeon, and we just had an X-ray machine, and so people with head injuries would be left on the trolley to die. And just the sheer number of cases that we had to do, and the number of patients that were having to just bandage and keep in the grounds meant 2 things. That in order to keep these patients who were bandaged from dying from infections, because after 4 or 5 days of open wounds, these wounds become infected. And the only one, particularly with children who are more susceptible to infection, and the only way you could keep them alive was unfortunately to scrub these wounds with disinfectant without the anesthetic. And so my day would be made out of running between the operating rooms where we were doing the surgeries to another room that we had turned into a dressing clinic where I would do this wound cleaning procedures and then go back and operate. And really, it was after 2 days after an attack on a mosque, which had been which was in the Sabra neighborhood, and we had received from that mosque 50 dead and hundreds wounded. And the attack I believe, used a new form of hellfire, drone-fired missile that fragments, the casing fragments, and spreads horizontally, inflicting as much injuries as possible. And we had operated until 5 o'clock that morning when we ran out of anesthetic in the Al-Ahli hospital, and we had to stop operating. And it was that I decided that there was nothing left for me to be able to do in the Al-Ahli hospital. And the decision was to try to find another hospital in the south and make the trek, which is a 6-hour walk from northern Gaza to the south. When I did eventually manage to get to the south, I discovered that also the hospitals had yet to be attacked as viciously as they were, and they have been. And before we came here, the Israeli army had broken into the Amal hospital, run by the Red Crescent Society in Khan Yunis, and completely surrounded Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. When I finally got to the south, and this is what Khalid was talking about, at that stage, the system was so depleted from consumables and medication that the operating rooms would not function at anywhere near capacity. They were being kept for the most life-saving procedures. so for the 2 following days, all I did was dressing changes and bandaging people and hoping that somehow things would change so that they would have a chance to get to the operating rooms. And really, around day 43, I just felt that the problem was that the system had collapsed to the point where it wasn't that there were enough surgeons, there were more than enough surgeons for the number of hospitals that were there. The system had just been brought to its knees, and my presence was redundant, and I made the difficult decision then to leave Gaza through Rafah.
I mean, Dr. Hassan, what would you say to the world who, it seems, are normalising attacks on the healthcare system in all sorts of different ways, including via bombing hospitals, hitting and targeting doctors even in their own homes, shooting patients who are trying to go to or leave hospitals, and also stopping medication from coming into Gaza? It's as if it's a normal thing and not a massive violation of international humanitarian law. What do you say to the world?
For me, one of the most pressing issues facing the world today, as a result of this war, that goes beyond the question of Palestine, is that we are really at a juncture where, unless the rule of international law is reaffirmed and that insidious erosion of political expediency, which meant that international law only gets applied to the wrong culprit or the wrong victim, rather than based on the act, that continuous erosion basically led us to the point where you have a war where the destruction and dismantlement of the health system was a critical part of the military strategy, where 10,000 children were killed in the first 100 days, and where the political and military leaders were very open about their genocidal intent. I think that's one of the things about the South African submission to the ICJ, which they basically were able to show that from Netanyahu down to the military leaders, down to the members of the parliament, down to the individual soldiers, genocidal intent was very clearly articulated. And so we are at this historical juncture. The war that will come after Gaza will always start where Gaza finished. Will be okay to kill 10,000 children. It will be okay for military schools to teach the importance of dismantling the health system as part of your military campaign. It will be okay to use sophisticated monitoring equipment to find the movement, to track the movement of selected doctors who are critical to the functioning of the health system so that they can be targeted when they get home. It will be okay to carpet bomb all of the universities so that the place becomes completely uninhabitable. And it will be okay to engineer through a series of destructive acts infectious disease epidemics so that these infections also take their toll on the women. Unless we step back from this war, we apply international law, we hold the criminals to account, we will completely turn our backs on anything that even if we had partially agreed to after the Second World War about the conduct of war, about international humanitarian law, that will die with the people that are being killed in Gaza.
Thank you. Just to let people know who are here and on Zoom, we are trying to fix the slide wider issue, and want to get your questions in, and we'll start on the questions in a bit. Dr. Hassan is on it. First of all, can I ask a question which you're not usually asked, which is, how are you?
That's a difficult one. Overwhelmed, but full of energy and hope and determination. And depression is not an option for us. It's a luxury. So fun.
And I'm not exaggerating when I say that we're seeing you on our screens everywhere. And I think that is actually a massive achievement. Because the way you advocate for the Palestinian people, I've not seen, well, one or two people, I've not seen so many Palestinians being able to do that. I'm sure many people are not happy that you're on our screens, on social media, on TV, different channels all the time. And that's why I asked you that question, because I think it's only fair that we see you not only as an ambassador for your country, for your people, but also as a human being. The questions that we are asked today is, do you think there's any hope for Palestine and the Palestinian people? And that's one of the things and subjects that we're here to discuss today. What would you, I know it's a difficult, open question, but I'm sure you've been thinking about what's coming next, because we've had enough of this question of what's going to happen the day after, for Israeli side, for the Americans, but not about the Palestinian people themselves.
First of all, Dr. Ahmed, thank you very much for moderating this with such eloquence. And thank you to the organizers of such a very vibrant event, health workers from Palestine, Dr. Omar Abdel Mannan. We wish him speedy recovery. He was supposed to be here, and I'll have a word with him because he wanted me to be here, and I thought he will be here. But speedy recovery. And a word of thanks to the hosts of this historic venue, the St. Baptist Church and Reverend Dr. Simon. I don't know if he's here. Give him a hand, please.